Main text of Zhang Ailing's Half-Life Chapter 6. Zhen's mother asked him to write a letter as soon as he arrived in Shanghai. He wrote a short message that night. He had no stamps on hand and was going to give it to Shu Hui to mail in the office. The next morning he specially sent him to Shu Hui's office so that he could see Manzin again. Manzin hasn't come yet. Zhen took the letter out of his pocket, placed it in front of Shu Hui and said, "Here, I forgot to give it to you just now." Then he leaned on the writing table and chatted. Manzin came and said, "Morning." She was wearing a light pink cheongsam, with a very narrow black and white braided lace on the cuffs. Zhen seemed to have never seen this dress of hers before. There was a faint smile on her face, and she didn't look at him very much, just pretending that he was not in the room. Yet her joy could not be concealed. The overflowing joy of life turned into thousands of amorous feelings on her body. When Shu Hui saw her, he was startled and said, "Why is Manzin so beautiful today?" He said it unintentionally, but Manzin didn't know why, but she was speechless and blushed. Zhen also became nervous next to him. Fortunately, Manzin only paused and then said with a smile, "From your tone, it seems that I am always ugly." Shu Hui said with a smile, "Don't distort my meaning." Manzin said with a smile, That's obviously what it means." What happened between the two of them was nothing to hide from anyone, let alone Shu Hui, but Zhen never told him. He has no desire to talk about Manzin with anyone, because he feels that others always say things that are irrelevant to his needs. But his psychology is so contradictory. And there is something he hopes others will know. Shu Hui was with them all day long, yet he could be so confused and didn't feel anything at all. If love is blind, it seems that the person next to you is even more blind. In their factory, the personnel aspect is quite complicated. Mr. Yi, who celebrated his birthday last time, has always been a party member for personal gain. And many traces of this have fallen into the eyes of the public. Taking advantage of the fact that he was the factory director's personal friend, he became more and more emboldened. And those who refused to join in the same deeds were naturally severely marginalized by him. Zhen works downstairs and is not very affected, unlike Shu Hui who works in the office upstairs and has a higher position and heavier responsibilities, so Shu Hui always wanted to leave. By chance, a friend introduced him to work in another factory, where he immediately resigned. When he was leaving, Zhen bid farewell to him, and he was also very kind. The period of 3 people eating together every day is coming to an end. There is a special atmosphere when the 3 of them are together. Zhen likes to sit and listen to Shu Hui and Manzin talking to each other. What they say is just superficial words, but Zhen is listening next to him. But I felt deeply happy. That kind of happiness can only be compared to the mood of childhood. In fact, Zhen's childhood was not very happy, so when people think about his childhood, he can only think back to the time when he and Shu Hui Manzin were together. Zhen held a farewell party for Shu Hui at the famous Lao's Hangsing restaurant. Later he heard other colleagues say, "You guys don't know how to order, and you didn't get the 2 most outstanding dishes." Shu Hui made a fuss about going to another restaurant. Then, Manzin said, "Then you treat me this time." Shu Hui said, "Why do you want me to treat you? This time it's your turn to bid farewell to me." The 2 of them pushed back and forth, and they were at a stalemate. When it came time to pay the bill, Shu Hui said he didn't bring any money. Manzin said, "Then I'll give you a cushion. You'll pay me back later." Shu Hui still refused to let go. After eating and walking out, Shu Hui bowed to Manzin and said with a smile, "Thank you." "Thank you." Manzin also bowed to him and said with a smile, "Thank you." "Thank you." Zhen couldn't help laughing next to him. Shu Hui moved to another place to work. The factory was in Yangshupu, so he lived in a dormitory and only came home once every weekend. One day, the Zhu family received a letter, which was addressed to Shu Hui. He was not at home, so Mrs. Zhu put the letter on his desk. Zhen saw it, but didn't pay attention. He accidentally saw the postmark of Nanjing on the envelope, and felt a little surprised, because when Shu Hui went to Nanjing last time, he once said that he didn't have any acquaintances in Nanjing and he had a girlfriend. He was asked to bring something to a Mrs. Ling, a family member he didn't even know. There was no signature on the envelope of this letter. It just said not specified. Of course, Zhen could never guess that it was from Cuizhi. Although he and Cuizhi had known each other since childhood, they did not recognize her handwriting. His mother once tried to get him to correspond with Cuizhi, but she failed. By the time Shu Hui came back on Saturday, Zhen had already forgotten about it and didn't think of asking him. Shu Hui read the letter. The content of the letter was very simple. She just said that she wanted to go to Shanghai to take the university entrance examination, and asked him to get her 2 articles of association. Shu Hui thought to herself that if Zhen asked, just tell him it was Cuizhi. It didn't matter. She wanted to ask someone to get the charter, to avoid suspicion. It was inconvenient to ask Zhen, so she asked him. It's also natural, but Zhen didn't ask about it, so of course he didn't mention it. A few days later, I took the time to go to the 2 universities she designated and asked for 2 copies of the charter, and sent them to her, along with a letter. Her reply came quickly, but Shu Hui took a long time to reply this time. The time interval was long and the letter was short. Cuizhi never wrote again. In fact, since Shu Hui came back from Nanjing, he often thought of her, thinking of her affection for him. He could only feel melancholy. In the first month of the next year, another letter came from Cuizhi. This letter was left unopened on Shu Hui's table for almost a week. Zhen saw it when he walked in and out, and when he saw the Nanjing postmark. I was thinking, I didn't know that Shu Hui had such a friend in Nanjing. Or maybe he was a friend from Shanghai who had recently gone to Nanjing. Ask him when he comes back. But after all, it was none of my business, and I forgot about it as soon as I turned my back. On Saturday, when Zhen was in the factory in the morning, someone called him. It turned out to be Yupeng. Yupeng had come to Shanghai. Ask him out to dinner. Zhen happened to have made an appointment with Manzin to meet in a restaurant. So he said to Yupeng, I have made an appointment with a friend to eat out. If you are happy, come together. Yupeng said, boyfriend or girlfriend? Zhen said, it's a female colleague, not a girlfriend. Don't talk nonsense later, or you will offend others. Yupeng said, oh, female colleague. Yes. What about the female staff there? No wonder you stay in Shanghai and refuse to go back. What are you doing in Shanghai? Are you just busy eating in restaurants with the vase? Hey, look, I won't tell you when I go back. Zhen at this time, I was very regretful. I should not have said so much to invite him to go with me. I had to say, stop talking nonsense. This Miss Gu is not that kind of person. You will know it when you see her. Yupeng said with a smile. Hey, Zhen, why don't you just ask Miss Gu to bring another girlfriend? Otherwise I won't feel too lonely by myself. Zhen frowned and said, why are you always talking nonsense? Who do you think I am? Peng smiled and said, okay, stop talking. Don't take it seriously. Although Yupeng was soft-spoken behind his back, and he was still polite and gentlemanly when he met Manzin, his attitude towards this kind of self-reliant woman was somewhat different from his attitude towards ladies from wealthy families. Manzin didn't know, she thought this man had always been so naughty. Zhen could see that and felt very angry. Yupeng drank 2 more glasses of wine and became a little drunk. He suddenly said with a smile, Amy somehow remembered that she would be a matchmaker for us. Zhen said with a smile, who are you going to be a matchmaker for? Yupeng said with a smile, me and Cuizhi. Zhen said with a smile, oh, that's great. It couldn't be better, Yupeng said hurriedly. Well, don't yell out. We don't know if it will work out yet. Again with a smile. He sighed slightly and said, it's all Yiming and Amy. Actually, I really don't want to get married. Once a person gets married, he loses his freedom. Don't you think so? Zhen said with a smile. Forget it. Well, it's time for someone to take care of you, he said while patting him on the shoulder. Yupeng seemed very proud, and Zhen also felt very happy, not out of a selfish mentality, thinking that it would be best if Cuizhi was married off, so that his mother and sister-in-law would give up on this idea. He didn't think about this level. He has always been very happy, as if the whole world has changed. Even Cuizhi, he thinks she is a very cute girl. and Yupeng will be very happy if he marries her. When Manzin saw them talking about these private matters, he didn't interrupt and just smiled from the side. After dinner, because his sister-in-law asked him to buy some clothing material, Zhen wanted to take this opportunity to give it to Yupeng to take home, so he asked Yupeng to go home with him to get it. Manzin went back alone. Here Zhen brought Yupeng to Zhu's house. Since it was Saturday, Shu Hui also came back in the afternoon. He had only been home for a while when he saw Yupeng coming, which was unexpected. Shu Hui looked down on Yupeng the most and thought he was very boring. Although he had some interactions with him, he was just lazy. Fortunately, Yupeng has no inferiority complex, so he never feels that others look down on him. When Zhen took out the piece of clothing and handed it to him, Yupeng opened it and saw that it was a piece of tile gray silk with small plum blossoms sprouting out. When Yupeng saw it, he couldn't help but exclaimed and said with a smile, "It's just like Miss Gu's clothes. I was thinking there, she was dressed so plainly, like a little widow. So it was you who gave it to her?" Zhen was a little embarrassed and said with a smile, "Stop talking nonsense." Yupeng said with a smile, "How can it be such a coincidence?" Zhen said, "What's the wonder? I asked me to buy ingredients because of my sister-in-law. And I understand this. So I asked Miss Gu to go shopping with me that day. And she also bought one at the same time." Yupeng smiled and said, "Then what are you relying on? I've already seen that you have a good friendship. When will you get married?" Zhen said with a smile, "Maybe you have been thinking about marriage all the time, so you always talk about marriage. If you make trouble again, I will announce it to you." Yupeng said hurriedly, "No, no, no." Uncle Hui said with a smile, "Why? Yupeng is getting married." Yupeng said, "Listen to his nonsense." After a few more jokes, he got up and left. Zhen and Shu Hui sent him out, but they saw snowflakes falling outside the door, and they didn't know when it started. The two of them went back upstairs together. Zhen was overheard by Shu Hui because of what Yupeng had teased him about just now, saying that he and Manzin were good friends. He must have been thinking about why they had been hiding it from him since they were such close friends. Now it was revealed. I feel very embarrassed. Zhen had made an appointment with Manzin today to go to her house to watch a movie together later. It was just because Shu Hui rarely came back that he couldn't leave as soon as they met, so he had to sit down and prepare to talk for a while. When he had nothing to say, he told him that Yupeng might marry Cuizhi. In fact, this news cannot be said to be an unexpected blow to Shu Hui, because Shu Hui saw a letter from Cuizhi as soon as she came home today. The letter said that she had been feeling very depressed recently and that she might have no hope of studying in Shanghai. Her family wanted her, got engaged. However, she didn't tell who the target was. Shu Hui always thought it was someone he didn't know, but he didn't expect it to be Yupeng. She wrote to him, as if hoping he would show some expression, but what could he do? It was not that he lacked courage, but he felt that the problem was not entirely with her family. He couldn't help but worry about her. She was used to enjoying things and never knew what hardships were. If she acted on emotion now, she would definitely regret it in the future. Maybe he was overthinking it, but he had great ambitions. So why wouldn't he encounter a stumbling block just before he started? And now she is going to marry Yupeng. It would be fine if he married a better person, and he wouldn't be so sad. He lay on the bed, put his hands under his head, and looked out the window wordlessly, with heavy snow falling outside. Zhen smiled and said, "Let's go watch a movie together." "Okay." Shu Hui said, "It's snowing so heavily. Why are you still going out?" After saying that, he simply shrank his feet, put on his leather shoes, and slept on the bed. He dragged a quilt over and put it on his body. Mrs. Su walked into the room and took the teacup used by the guest to wash. Seeing Shu Hui lying on the bed in the middle of the day, she said, "Why are you lying down? Are you uncomfortable?" Shu Hui replied angrily, "No." To say he was uncomfortable seemed to be saying he was lovesick. He was very angry. Mrs. Su looked at his face, then came over and touched his head, saying, "It seems that you are not acting like this. Don't be cold. Have a glass of wine to go away the cold. I will bring it to you." Shu Hui was speechless. Mrs. Zhu brought over a bottle of wine brewed with guangan orange at home. Shu Hui said impatiently, "I tell you it's nothing. Just let me sleep for a while." Mrs. Zhu said, "Okay, I'll leave it here. You can drink it as you like." After saying that, she left angrily. He walked to the door and said again, "If you want to sleep, take off your shoes and have a good sleep." Shu Hui didn't answer. After she left, he just sat up and took off his shoes. He was untying his shoelaces and looked up. When he saw the wine on the table, he poured a glass and drank to relieve his boredom. But the wine is in the belly. The things are in the heart. There always seems to be a layer in the middle. No matter how much wine you drink, it can't reach your heart. I want to soak and boil the lump in my heart with soju, but I just can't. Before he knew it, while drinking one cup after another, Zhen went downstairs to make a phone call. He called Manzin and asked her if she wanted to go to the movies because it was snowing. In the end, I gave up watching the movie, but I still wanted to go to her home to see her. When they made a phone call, it was definitely not something that could be ended in just a few words. When he hung up the phone and came back upstairs, he could smell the smell of alcohol filling the room as soon as he walked in. He smiled unconsciously and said, "Hey, it's not that I don't want to drink. Have you finished the bottle of wine?" Mrs. Zhu was walking by the door and shouted to Shu Hui, "What's wrong with you today? I asked you to have a drink to avoid the cold. Why do you drink so stupidly? You always drink wine every year. I can't keep it, and I drank it all in just a few months." Shu Hui ignored him and fell on the bed with a blush on his face. When he saw Zhen put on his coat and look like he was about to go out, he said, "You still have to go out. Want to go out?" Zhen said with a smile, "I promised to go to Manzin's place." Shu Hui saw that he seemed a little shy, and then he remembered that Yu Peng made fun of him and Manzin, which must be true. Seeing him happily going out in the snow, Shu Hui suddenly felt a sense of desolation, so he turned over and fell asleep with his head covered. Zhen arrived at Manzin's house, and the two chatted round the fire. The stove is a very small kerosene stove. It was originally used for cooking, but now it is moved into the room and used for stewing water and heating. Manzin rubbed a match and lit the flames one by one, just like lighting a small circle of candles on a birthday cake. Because it was Saturday afternoon, her brothers and sisters were all at home. Zhen is now quite familiar with them. Zhen has never liked children. He used to live in his own home. Although he only had one nephew, he often found it annoying. However, Manzin's younger siblings were like this, but he had a good impression of them. The children ran upstairs and downstairs like a horse. He came running up and down, stood at the door of the room, and then ran away. Later, they went to the alley to build a snowman, and the whole house suddenly became quiet. The kerosene stove has been burning for a long time, and the flame gradually turns into a beautiful blue. The blue and prosperous fire is as blue as water. Zhen said, "Manzin, when will we get married? The last time I went back, my mother also said she hoped I would get married soon." Manzin said, "But I think it's best not to rely on family help." Zhen originally thought so too. In the past, he had a conflict with his father over the freedom to choose his career and went out to work. After the quarrel, he still asked his father to pay for him to find a wife, which was really frustrating. Zhen said, "But if we continue to wait like this, how long will it take?" Manzin said, "Let's wait and see. My family also needs me now." Zhen frowned and said, "Your family is really tired. It's so heavy that I can't stand it. For example, after getting married, two people are better than one." Manzin smiled and said, "That's exactly what I'm afraid of. I don't want to push you in." Zhen said, "Why?" Manzin said, "Your career has just begun. It is already troublesome to support one family. If you have to support two families, it will simply ruin your future." Zhen looked at it. She smiled and said, "I know you are doing this for my own good, but I don't know why, I hate you a little bit." She didn't say anything at the time, but when he kissed her, she asked in a very small voice, "Do you still hate me?" A pot of water was boiling on the stove, and they didn't even know it. In the next room, Mrs. Gu heard the kettle cover being pushed against the heat and making a beeping sound. She couldn't help but shout outside, "Manzan, has the water boiled? I want to make tea." Manzan agreed. Stood up hurriedly, brushed her hair in front of the mirror, ran out to get tea, and made her mother a cup of tea. Mrs. Gu stood at the door of the room holding tea, sipping it one mouthful at a time, and said with a smile, "Stand with the tea stick. There must be a visitor." Manzan smiled at Shijin, pursed her lips, and said, "Well, isn't it already here?" What she said seemed to be too explicit, and Shijin felt a little embarrassed. Mrs. Gu took the boiling water to the thermos, and Manzan said, "I'm going to wash it. Mama's sitting here talking." Mrs. Gu said, "No, I can't stand up as soon as I sit down. I have to cook again soon." She struck up a conversation and walked away. It was getting dark. Every evening at dusk, there is always a seller of dried mushrooms and tofu who comes to this alley to sell his food. "You must come here every day." Now I heard the old voice again. "Dry beans, dry them. 5 spice mushroom beans, dry them." Shijin said with a smile, "This man is really unstoppable in all weathers." Manzan said, "Hey, there is never a day when he doesn't come here. But his dried tofu is not very delicious. We ate it once." They listened in silence as the old voice gradually faded away. The time of this day also disappeared along with that call. This guy selling dried tofu is like father time.
Alright, this part of the story ends here.
Want to know what happened next? Let's listen to the breakdown next time.